In less than 24 hours, one man was arrested, tried 4 times, tortured beyond the limits of human survival, and executed in public. He was not a criminal. The very judges who condemned him declared him innocent, and yet the sentence was carried out. What happened in those hours would alter the course of human history forever. This is the story of the final 24 hours of Jesus of Nazareth. It was the night between Thursday and Friday. Jerusalem was overflowing. More than 200,000 pilgrims had arrived to celebrate Passover. The streets smelled of roasted lamb and bitter herbs. Inside an upper room somewhere in the city, 13 men reclined around a table. None of them knew this would be the last meal they would ever share together, and one of them had already sealed the betrayal. What you're about to hear is not a sermon, and it is not a religious lesson. It is a historical and forensic reconstruction of the most documented hours in all of antiquity. 4 independent sources recorded the same events. Roman, Jewish, and Christian historians described the same figures, the same places, the same outcome. Everything you will hear actually happened, and by the end, you will understand why the world never forgot. To understand what happened that night, you need to understand the world Jesus lived in. An occupied world, an explosive world, balanced on the edge of collapse. On one side, the iron power of the Roman Empire. On the other, the religious authority of the Sanhedrin. And caught between them, a Galilean preacher who had spent 3 years challenging both. It was a fatal combination, and everyone involved already knew it. Jerusalem during Passover was a pressure cooker. The city's normal population was around 80,000. During Passover week, that number tripled. Pilgrims from across the Mediterranean came to commemorate the Exodus from Egypt, the founding event of Jewish identity. For the Romans, it was the most dangerous week of the year. Governor Pontius Pilate traveled specially from Caesarea Maritima to reinforce security with additional troops. Tensions were already running high before Jesus arrived. The Romans had occupied the land of Israel for 90 years. For Jewish people, that was a profound theological humiliation. God had promised the land to his people, and now it was under the heel of pagans. Crushing taxes, Roman courts, the constant presence of foreign soldiers. Any spark could ignite a revolt. And the religious leaders of the Sanhedrin had reached a quiet arrangement with Rome. Keep the peace, and we keep our power. Jesus had entered Jerusalem 5 days earlier, riding a donkey, welcomed by crowds shouting, "Hosanna to the Son of David." For the authorities, that was a political declaration. He had driven merchants from the temple, overturned the money changers' tables, publicly confronted the Pharisees and scribes. In days, he had touched both pillars of power, economic and religious. The Sanhedrin's leadership made a decision. He had to die before Passover officially began. That was when Judas Iscariot approached the chief priests. Matthew records that he asked what they would pay to hand Jesus over. The answer was 30 pieces of silver, the price of a slave under Mosaic law. Judas accepted. His exact motives remain one of history's most debated questions. Disappointment, political calculation, simple greed. No source says with certainty. What we know is this: the deal was made. The clock had started. On Thursday evening, Jesus gathered his 12 disciples in a borrowed upper room to celebrate the Passover Seder, the ritual meal commemorating the Exodus from Egypt. It was a meal dense with symbol: unleavened bread for the haste of escape, bitter herbs for the suffering of slavery, red wine for the blood of the sacrificed lambs. Jesus took the bread, broke it, and said, "This is my body given for you." An ancient ritual was about to take on a meaning no one in that room fully understood. During the meal, Jesus did something that shocked his disciples. He rose from the table, removed his outer garment, wrapped a towel around his waist, filled a basin with water, and began washing each man's feet. the most degrading task reserved for the lowest-ranking slaves. Peter refused. Jesus insisted. It was a calculated gesture, a lesson about leadership through service. But there was something deeper. Jesus knew that one of the men whose feet he washed had already betrayed him. Jesus announced openly what he already knew. "One of you will betray me." The disciples looked at each other, confused, disturbed. "Is it I, Lord?" each one asked. Jesus referenced Psalm 41. "The one who shares bread with me has lifted his heel against me." John, reclining beside Jesus, leaned in and whispered, "Who is it?" Jesus dipped a piece of bread and handed it to Judas, then said quietly, "What you are going to do, do it quickly." Judas walked out into the night. After the meal, Jesus led the 11 remaining disciples across the Kidron Valley to the Mount of Olives. Gethsemane was a frequent retreat, meaning Judas knew exactly where to find him. Along the way, Jesus stated something Peter strongly refused to accept. "Tonight, all of you will fall away on account of me." Peter pushed back, vowing he would never abandon him, even if everyone else did. Jesus looked at him. "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. In Gethsemane, Jesus asked Peter, James, and John to stay awake. Going a bit further, he fell face down on the ground. The recorded prayer is unsettling in its raw humanity. "Father, if it is possible, take this cup from me." Luke adds a medical detail scholars still debate. Jesus sweating drops of blood. This is hematidrosis, a rare condition reported during cases of extreme psychological and physical anguish. He was not at peace in that garden. He was utterly terrified. 3 times Jesus returned to find his closest disciples asleep. 3 times he woke them, asked them to stay alert, and went back to pray. Upon his 3rd return, he simply said, "Enough, the hour has come." What followed was terrifyingly fast. Torches and lanterns suddenly flickered between the dark olive trees. An armed crowd entered the garden, temple guards sent by the chief priests, backed by Roman soldiers. And leading the hostile mob was none other than Judas Iscariot. The agreed signal was a kiss, the standard greeting between teachers and disciples in first-century Jewish culture. Judas approached Jesus, said "Rabbi," and kissed him. As soldiers moved in, Peter reacted with sudden violence. Drawing a sword, he sliced off the right ear of Malchus, the high priest's servant. Jesus sharply rebuked him, touched the man's ear, and healed it. He then uttered a lasting warning, "All who draw the sword will die by the sword." And he surrendered. The first stop was the house of Annas, father-in-law to Caiaphas, a former high priest and an incredibly powerful man in Jerusalem. Annas interrogated Jesus about his followers and teachings. Jesus answered with measured composure, "Ask those who heard me. They know what I said." A guard aggressively struck Jesus across the face for perceived disrespect. It was the first physical blow. Jesus looked at him calmly. "If I spoke wrongly, testify to it. If rightly, why do you strike me?" With Jesus arrested, the disciples scattered, exactly as predicted hours earlier. Mark describes an anonymous young man who tried to follow, wearing only a linen cloth. Soldiers grabbed him. He violently twisted free, leaving the cloth behind to run away naked. Scholars debate if this was Mark himself recording a personal humiliation. But the tragic central fact remains. In the ultimate moment of danger, everyone abandoned Jesus. Heavily armed soldiers led him to the high priest. From Annas, Jesus was taken to Caiaphas, the official high priest. The Sanhedrin had assembled illegally in the middle of the night, violating Jewish law, which strictly forbade capital trials after dark. Witnesses were brought to accuse Jesus, but their false testimonies blatantly contradicted each other. Frustrated, Caiaphas demanded, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus answered clearly, "I am." Caiaphas violently tore his own robes. The charge was blasphemy. While Jesus was interrogated inside, Peter watched from a distance, warming his hands at a courtyard fire. A servant girl recognized him. "You also were with Jesus the Galilean." Peter sharply denied it. A second person recognized his distinct Galilean accent. Another denial. A third person pressed him. Peter denied it a third time, swearing heavily he did not know the man. A rooster crowed immediately. Jesus, being led through the yard, turned and looked directly at Peter's face. Luke records that look as one of the most devastating moments in the narrative. Peter left the courtyard and wept bitterly. Across the city, Judas reached the end of his tragic arc. Seeing that Jesus was condemned, he returned the 30 silver pieces to the chief priests, declaring, "I have betrayed innocent blood." They replied with cold indifference, "That is your concern, not ours." Judas threw the coins into the temple, walked away, and hanged himself. Early morning, the Sanhedrin brought Jesus to Pontius Pilate, the sole man authorized to order an execution in the Roman province of Judea. Pilate interrogated Jesus and found no valid basis for a charge. Learning Jesus was Galilean, he passed the case to Herod Antipas, then in Jerusalem for Passover. Herod questioned him deeply, demanded a miracle, but received only silence. Mocking him, Herod dressed Jesus in a royal robe and sent him back to Pilate. The case had come full circle. Pilate tried 3 times to release Jesus, declaring him innocent. He offered the Passover custom, free one prisoner of the crowd's choice. They chose Barabbas, a true insurrectionist, guilty of murder during an actual revolt. The Gospels note the mounting pressure. Chief priests stirred the crowd, chanting, "Crucify him." Pilate called for a basin and washed his hands before them all. "I am innocent of this man's blood." But the fatal sentence had been spoken. "Take him away." What occurred in the Praetorium courtyard before the crucifixion is detailed in all 4 Gospels and backed by Roman military records. Flogging was far worse than we imagine. The weapon was a flagrum, a leather whip with jagged bone and metal embedded at its tips. Every single strike tore deeply through flesh and muscle. Modern forensic experts conclude this brutal beating alone could have killed a man. Yet, Jesus miraculously survived this torture, only to be sent to the cross. Following the brutal flogging, Roman soldiers dressed Jesus in a purple robe, the royal color used as a deliberate mockery. They twisted a crown of sharp thorns and forced it onto his head. They placed a reed in his right hand to serve as a fake scepter. Kneeling before him, they shouted, "Hail, King of the Jews!" Then they struck him with the reed, spat on him, and slapped his face. When the mockery ended, they removed the robe, put his own clothes back on, and led him out. The condemned man carried his own patibulum, the horizontal crossbeam, through the city streets. He did not carry the full cross as classical art suggests, but only the upper section, weighing roughly 40 pounds. Exhausted from the flogging, Jesus collapsed under its immense weight. The soldiers then grabbed a pilgrim arriving from the fields, Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus. Mark notes these specific names, hinting they were known to the early Christian church. The road to Golgotha, Aramaic for place of the skull, wound through Jerusalem's crowded streets. Luke notes that local women mourned and wailed as Jesus passed by. He stopped and addressed them. "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children." This ominous warning referred to the coming destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, which Jesus had accurately foretold. But in that chaotic moment, few truly listened. The crowd merely wanted the spectacle. Golgotha was located just outside the city walls, near a busy road, the exact placement Romans preferred for executions. Crucifixion was the ultimate penalty reserved for rebellious slaves and state enemies. Its goal was not merely death, but sheer terror. Victims were publicly displayed, so every passing citizen understood the severe cost of defying Rome. 2 other men were crucified that same day, placed on either side of Jesus, men the Gospels describe as violent insurrectionists. The crucifixion started with heavy nails. They were not driven through the palms, but through the wrists, between the radius and ulnar bones, where the tissue could support the body's weight. Archaeology confirms this. A Roman-era tomb revealed a victim's skeleton with an iron nail still piercing the heel bone. His feet were nailed through the sides, with knees slightly bent. Finally, the heavy wooden cross was hoisted up and violently dropped into its earthly socket with a jolt. Death by crucifixion was a slow, agonizing asphyxiation, with arms stretched and the body hanging, chest muscles contracted, making breathing out impossible without pushing up against the pierced feet. The cycle was cruel. Push up to breathe, collapse in pain, repeat. A healthy man could endure for days, but the prior flogging severely shortened this timeline. It was 9 in the morning when the nails went in. Above his head, Pilate's sign read, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." From the cross, Jesus spoke 7 profound times. First, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." To the defending criminal beside him, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Seeing his mother Mary and disciple John below, "Woman, here is your son." And to John, "Here is your mother." John states that from that hour he took Mary into his home. Even in his dying breaths, Jesus was thoughtfully securing care and protection for the people he loved most. At noon, the 6th hour in the Jewish calendar, a deep darkness fell over the land for 3 hours. It was not a solar eclipse. Passover aligns with a full moon, making eclipses astronomically impossible. Historians still debate the cause: a severe sandstorm, unnatural cloud cover, or something else. Regardless, historical accounts agree the midday turned completely dark. From that blackness, Jesus cried in Aramaic, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani?" My God, why have you forsaken me?" Jesus' final 3 statements arrived in rapid succession. First, "I am thirsty." A soldier soaked a sponge in posca, the cheap vinegar wine carried by Roman troops, and lifted it to his lips using a hyssop branch. Then, "It is finished." The Greek word tetelestai was an ancient commercial term meaning the debt is fully paid. Gathering his last ounce of remaining strength, Jesus shouted in a loud, clear voice, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." He then bowed his head. The Roman centurion overseeing the execution stood directly facing Jesus as he died. Mark records his exact words, "Surely this man was the Son of God." Matthew and Luke verify this. This battle-hardened soldier, completely desensitized to violent crucifixions, was profoundly shaken by the unique way Jesus died. Simultaneously, Matthew documents that the earth violently shook, rocks split apart, and the temple curtain, a massive woven fabric 20 meters high, tore from top to bottom. Since it was the eve of the Sabbath, Jewish leaders requested that the victims' legs be broken. This brutal tactic accelerated death. Unable to push up, asphyxiation struck quickly. Soldiers broke the legs of both criminals beside him. However, when they reached Jesus, he was already dead. To ensure this, a guard pierced his side with a spear. John, an eyewitness, notes that blood and water flowed out, a precise medical detail indicating a punctured pericardium in a deceased body. Not far away, a dedicated group of women watched the grim spectacle from a distance. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome, women who had loyally followed Jesus since Galilee. While the 11 male disciples were scattered or hiding in fear, these brave women stayed. They watched him die. They carefully noted exactly where his body was taken. Their unwavering faithfulness here was no minor detail. It would prove absolutely essential to the events unfolding 3 days later. Joseph of Arimathea, a wealthy Sanhedrin member who secretly opposed the guilty verdict, personally asked Pilate for the body to ensure a proper burial. Surprised that Jesus died so rapidly, victims usually lingered for days, Pilate demanded confirmation from the centurion. Once verified, Pilate released the corpse. Joseph bought fine linen, lowered the body from the cross, and carefully laid it in a pristine, rock-hewn tomb that he had originally prepared for his own family's use. The Sabbath arrived as the sun set, and the city fell into a strict ritual silence. The scattered disciples hid, paralyzed by absolute terror. Peter bore the crushing weight of his denial. John carried the traumatic images of the cross. Mary endured a profound, nameless grief. The women knew the tomb's location and planned to return Sunday morning to anoint the body with spices, a final rite interrupted by the rushed burial. The world moved on. The sun rose. The Sabbath passed quietly. If you truly want to understand what led directly to this brutal execution, you must watch our video detailing the miracles and teachings of Jesus. Every intense temple confrontation, every heated debate with the strict Pharisees, every public healing that attracted massive crowds, it all culminated on this dark night. Comprehending his 3-year ministry gives these final 24 hours a drastically different, heavier weight. The link to that essential background video is right there. However, the Passion story does not conclude inside that sealed rock tomb. The armed guards posted by the chief priests at the entrance were not merely ceremonial. They were a desperate admission of deep fear. 3 days. That was the precise timeline Jesus had predicted. When the mourning women arrived at the garden at dawn on Sunday, holding their spices, they found the massive stone rolled away. What occurs next is the final chapter, the resurrection, and it changes absolutely everything. 20 centuries later, his name remains the most spoken in human history. The global calendar is anchored to his birth. Over 2 billion people currently base their lives around the harrowing 24 hours you just witnessed. Whether believer or skeptic, historians, philosophers, and scientists agree something unprecedented happened in first-century Jerusalem that permanently altered civilization's trajectory. The debate is no longer if it happened. The debate is what it truly was.